Hello and welcome back to the channel. Movies are subjective. Movie comedies are particularly subjective. Humour is impossible to create in a way that's going to amuse everyone. Comedies can be culturally specific and gendered. They can be reliant on previous knowledge by the audience. A person's response to humour can be determined by their belief systems and their prejudices, which are sometimes the same thing. It can depend on variables like education, hobbies, health, wealth, and whether you spilled your coffee this morning. For instance, I once watched a Pentecostal Christian comedy set, and it was about as funny as a kitten's positive biopsy. So with all those provisos about the variability of humour, and taking into account that I've been in lockdown since Jesus was playing Minecraft, here are 4 movie comedies that I like. I had to start this video with a vulgar pleasure. A Whiskey Tango Foxtrot movie that parodied horror films well before the Scary Movie franchise. I have no explanation for why I like this movie. It blasts jokes at the audience like shotgun shells filled with manure.
You mean you haven't slept in 13 years?
I'm 31 years old, Doc, you tell me, huh?
Like many of the movies of the 1980s, it was designed to get bums into the cheap seats in cinemas and to provide a product for the slow media explosion of the VHS era. Maybe nostalgia is part of my enjoyment of Wacko. I miss browsing video store shelves for $5 for $10 rentals that nobody had borrowed for a couple of years. In this movie, directed by Graydon Clark, who also made a movie called Lambada: The Forbidden Dance, and the 3 big stars here are Academy Award winner George Kennedy, who got an Oscar as Best Supporting Actor in Cool Hand Luke, Stella Stevens, and Joe Don Baker. And for those of you who are so inclined, you do get to see Joe Don Baker in drag. The movie is set 13 years after the pumpkin-headed lawnmower killer murdered Mary Graves' big sister, and Alfred Hitchcock High School is holding their annual Halloween pumpkin prom. A burned-out police detective called Dick Harbinger, played by Joe Don Baker, he believes the pumpkin-headed lawnmower killer will come back on the 13th anniversary of his initial rampage, and Dick plans to stop him.
So don't pretend you don't know what I'm here for.
Well, let me guess. This is the classic cast suspicion on perverted school gardener scene?
You got a geek. Zeke!
Now this movie should have worked the cast, including Julia Duffy, Andrew Dice Claney's first film role, and cult movie stalwarts like Charles Napier and Anthony James are solid. The jokes have good bones, but they're poorly presented, and in some cases, particularly when it comes to Mary's boyfriend Norman and his desiccated mother, they telegraph themselves. There's some good acting in this movie as well. You get E.G. Daly, who played Dottie in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, who has a few moments as one of Mary's best friends. But the problems are, firstly, the direction. It doesn't frame the jokes very well. Also, too much is thrown into the pot. Referential gags like the football team being turned into beastmen by Dr. Moreau don't land well, though. The basic concept is solid. We never get to see what happens after they're turned into beastmen before the big game. And other things like the name of the high school could have been a lot subtler as well. But you have to love a movie that mocks a horrible film like Grease. Andrew Dice Clay's shtick in this movie is a dead-on parody of Travolta's Vinnie Barbarino and Henry Winkler's Arthur Fonzarelli. And it kind of works. Stella Stevens, who has always been great at comedy, has some moments as Mary's mother, while George Kennedy leans into her creepy, weird and awful father. I'm not sure how a movie like Wacko would play to a younger audience, but for those of us who have blown out enough birthday candles, it's a bit of dumb nostalgic fun, and rewatching it was kind of entertaining. How can you not love a movie written and directed by Stanley Tucci? The Tooch can do no wrong. This hidden gem from 1998 is an old-fashioned screwball comedy in the 1930s style. Tucci and Oliver Platt play Arthur and Maurice, a pair of dedicated but unsuccessful actors in 1938 New York City, who live basically by petty swindling. After they get in trouble for insulting a famous actor, Sir Jeremy Burton, played by Alfred Molina, they escape the police by becoming stowaways on an ocean liner full of weird and wonderful characters, including Burton himself. And yes, I do know that Alfred Molina is in the next Spider-Man movie. Arthur and Maurice are the movie bromance you never knew you needed in your life. Tucci and Platt are old friends, and it shows they're a lot of fun when they're playing off each other. You add to this a supporting cast that's full of great actors. Billy Connolly playing a gay professional tennis player.
Was that your best shot, savage gypsy lover?
Steve Buscemi as a depressed lounge singer. Isabella Rossellini as a mysterious countess. Lily Taylor as one of the ship's staff members. And you also get Richard Jenkins and Alison Janney and Tony Shalhoub playing a terrorist waiter. The movie deserves to be better known than it is. The ensemble works like the parts of a Swiss watch. The dialogue is wry, hilarious and witty, and you get the sense while watching it that all of the actors are having fun as they play these silly, larger-than-life characters. And the movie ends with a fourth wall-breaking, silly dance by the cast, so what's not to love? And you haven't lived until you've seen Steve Buscemi singing the nearness of you while crying his heart out. There's a sweetness and lightness of heart to the Imposters, which we need right now. It's a cliche to say that it's a feel-good comedy, but it is. You might have some trouble finding a physical copy of this movie. It's a movie I like a lot. I've got the CD of the soundtrack, which has got a lot of period songs in it, sung by the cast members, and sometimes I just play to hear Steve Buscemi sing again.
It's not the pale moon that excites me.
Director-writer Blake Edwards had a charmed life in the 1960s in Hollywood. He directed Breakfast at Tiffany's, he made the Pink Panther movies, he made The Great Race and The Party, and Hollywood loved him. Then he made two films in 1970 and 1971, Darling Lily and Wild Rovers, that flopped, arguably due to the studios cutting the movies quite badly. A decade later, Edwards went for his revenge against Hollywood with this romantic satire on Tinseltown, which is now best known as the movie in which Edwards' wife Julie Andrews revealed her
dusty substances
on film. Richard Mulligan, who's miscast, plays Felix Farmer, a movie producer married to Sally Miles, played by Julie Andrews, and their most recent movie, Nightwind, is a flop. Felix has a mental breakdown while the studio goes into damage control. He even attempts suicide, and suicide in this movie is played for laughs, which is not something you would get in our current day and age. The studio head, played by Robert Vaughn, a character based on Robert Evans, sends a director, Tim Cully, played by William Holden in his last film role, and a publicist called Ben, played by Robert Webber, to get Felix to sign the rights to the movie back to the studio. Along with a third friend, Dr. Irving Feingarten, played by Robert Preston, the trio try to snap Felix out of his funk.
Are you perchance a nurse?
No, I used to be a junkie.
Would it endanger your amateur standing if I ask you to use a sterilized needle?
And over the course of the day, a party spontaneously forms around the group.
So what do you do?
I breed armadillos.
Oh, come on.
You enjoy your work?
Not especially. But the armadillos sure get a kick out of it.
Felix has an epiphany and snaps out of the funk with the odd decision to make Nightwind R-rated and to sex it up and get his wife Sally to bare her breasts on screen.
dusty substances.
This is a weird film in many ways. Firstly, it would have played better if made a decade before. By the 1980s, adult films were an accepted part of the cinematic landscape, and the idea of an actress baring her breasts in cinema, even if it was Julie Andrews, wasn't that big a deal. Secondly, the best of this movie is about the male friendship between Cully, Irving and Ben. The main plot, Felix's movie, is only incidental to the heart of the film. Yes, it gives the opportunity for Blake Edwards to strike back against the studio system, and there's a fine ensemble of actors working here to help him. Robert Vaughn, Larry Hagman, Marissa Berenson, Shelley Winters, Robert Loggia, Stuart Margolin and Rosanna Arquette, amongst others. There's also Paul Stewart, who had worked many years before with Orson Welles in the Mercury Theatre, and also appeared in one of my favourite movies about Hollywood, The Bad and the Beautiful. But Holden, Preston and Webber carry the film. Spoilers from here on. When Felix dies, they decide he's too good for the Hollywood bullshit funeral they're going to give him. So one night they steal the body for a last night of friendship and drinking, and then decide to give him a Viking funeral, which the film cross-cuts with the formal service, where there's an unfortunate cameo by Larry Storch, playing an Indian religious guru. Now, this part of the plot is based on a possibly apocryphal story of director Raoul Walsh and some say W.C. Fields stealing the body of the great actor John Barrymore from a funeral home one night in 1942 and posing him in Errol Flynn's home in Flynn's favourite armchair for Errol Flynn to find. Flynn talks about this in his own autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, but other people have since refuted the story. And in case you were wondering, John Barrymore was returned to the funeral home. s.o.b. was a financial failure in spite of Julie Andrews' unprecedented contribution. However, I like it a lot. I like the dialogue. It's sharp and witty and kind of wise as well. The three characters, Cully, Ben and Irving, are the most honest people in the movie. They don't have an agenda, they don't have any bullshit, all they have is friendship. And so they're the kind of core of the film in so many ways. While everybody around them is thinking about prestige and money, they're thinking about how to do the best they can for their friend. And that gives the movie a bit more heart than many of the Blake Edwards movies that I've seen. Is there anyone out there who doesn't love The Court Jester? Now, I'm undoubtedly going to get comments from churlish knaves who dislike this movie, but as far as I'm concerned, they can go and drink from the vessel with the pestle. It doesn't matter what this movie is about, it is fun from start to finish. You have that fourth wall breaking song at the start, written by Sammy Kahn and Danny Kaye's wife, Sylvia Fine. You get Glynis Johns as a beautiful guerrilla fighter. You get Basil Rathbone as the evil Lord Ravenhurst. You get Angela Lansbury as a snooty princess and Mildred Nadwick as a witch. And John Carradine as an Italian jester come assassin. You get Alan Napier, the original Alfred from Batman, playing one of the nobles, Lord Brockhurst. And you get not one but two Australian actors in the mix as well, Michael Pate and Edward Ashley. You have clever wordplay.
Does the talisman palace have the pellet with the poison?
No, the pellet with the poison's in the vessel with the pestle.
Oh, the pestle with the vessel.
The vessel with the pestle.
What about the palace from the chalice?
Not the palace from the chalice from the palace.
Where's the pellet with the poison?
In the vessel with the pestle.
You have dueling, you have jousting, you have matte paintings, you have a panoply of evil bastards, and you have clever songs. This movie, every time I watch it, I have a smile on my face. And this was also the last movie in which Basil Rathbone, who was once an Olympic fencer, has a sword fight. He was doubled in some of the scenes by the fight choreographer because Rathbone was in his 60s at the time and not as fast with a blade as he once was. The movie was written and directed by Melvin Frank and Norman Panama, who'd worked with Bob Hope and Bing Crosby on the Road movies together. They'd also just had a huge success with White Christmas. And there's a message in this movie as well. You didn't know there was a message in The Court Jester, and here's the message. If you want to overthrow a tyrant, make friends with lots of very short people. Anyway, that's it for this time around. Thank you very much for watching. As always, please consider subscribing, liking, hitting the notification bell, and leaving a comment to tell me what your favourite comedy feel-good comfort movies are. You can also support the channel by going to patreon.com/paleocinema and donating a few bucks there. And like I always say, look after yourself, stay safe. Do what you have to do, and you know what that is. Watch some fun movies, watch some funny movies you don't understand why you like. Watch some nostalgic movies from the 1980s and the 1950s. And I'll catch you next time.